Hello and welcome back to another video. And in today's video we are in the field, as you can see, and what I'm going to do in today's video is basically just test the soil, see how soft it is, how hard it is in different locations in a field and throughout several fields. So we have the field out there is classified as our softest field. We have this field that we're in now, we have one field out there, and we have another field just there, and then we have a couple at the back of our own house that I want to test as well. So you can see that this field is here. I'm basically in the middle of it. There's a slight hill falling that way, and it's also falling this way. So obviously on the top of the hill where I am now is probably going to be the best ground conditions. If I go down that direction towards the bottom of the hill, or down that direction towards the bottom of the hill where it's sloping downhill, it might be a little bit softer because the water is flowing down that hill and it mightn't be able to get to a drain or whatnot. But so first of all, we're going to see how far I can dig this down in the ground. Obviously if the ground conditions is good, I won't be able to get it down too deep or far. If the ground conditions are fairly soft, which is what I'm expecting in the majority of our fields, it's going to go down maybe a nice bit. So you can see there, that's about 1.5 feet. I was able to get that down before I started struggling. So when I'm pushing this down on the ground, I'm pushing it down with ease. Once I get to a spot where I have to put a bit of pressure onto it, I'm stopping. So this is how far I was able to get down with ease before I had to start putting pressure on the rebar to get it further in. So that's about 1.5 feet right there. And the clay that's on the rebar is quite mucky and guttery itself. So now when I get the spade and just dig a square section up to see what it's like underground, it should be quite, I'm expecting quite guttery. So now you can see there, bit of clay there. It's not awfully dry, there's still a bit of moisture in it, but it's still coming off a little bit crummy. So obviously the further down into the ground I'm getting, the more better it is, but there's still moisture in it. I can still mould it into a bit of a clay somewhat, but not too much because it'll break off into clumps like that. If it was really wet, I could mould the clay way easier with my fingers and it'll stick together. So I'm going to stick this back into the ground, tramp on it a small bit with my foot, and when we come to roll in the field it should be no bother. But we can see there, it's not awfully dry, but it's not too bad. What I might do next is maybe go down to a softer spot of this field, so a bit maybe down that direction where it's sloping down the way, because usually along there where it slopes down is usually the softest part of this field. So we'll have a look over there as well. Good as new-ish. So now we started up there. Whether or not you can see, there is a slight hill going up. So obviously every time it rains, the water is coming down this direction because I'm at the bottom of the hill. And you can tell because there's water there. And there's just water lying everywhere on the ground, as you can see there as well. Water. It's just water lying on top of the surface, on top of the ground, because every time it rains, which it has done quite a lot in the last couple of weeks over the night, it just comes down the hill because that's where it usually goes. And obviously this drain here, it's not really a drain worth talking about really. It's just a little trench in the field. It's not really worth talking about. It really needs to be cleaned up. but since March last year, March 2024, we have gotten into the acres scheme. So we're not allowed to do much drainage work, like modifying it or cleaning it too much. You know, if we wanted to make a drain wider or deeper, not allowed, cannot do it in the acre scheme. And I think there might be certain restrictions as well when it comes to cleaning it as well. So we have a couple of fields that are in the acre scheme that we just can't do a whole lot of drainage work on. I'm going to do exactly what I done up there, down here, and I'm expecting the soil and the ground just to be a little bit more wetter and a little bit more softer. So first up, as usual, it's the rebar. How far down I can get it into the ground before pressure starts coming onto it. So we'll try that now. Somewhere here, middle-ish, centre ground. It's not on a groove, on a hill part, and it's not in a hollow as well. So okay, so as you can see there, I basically stopped dead, so I hit either really hard ground or a stone. And as you can see there, that's about, I think that's a little bit deeper than what I got above there. That's maybe 1.5 foot minimum, maybe 1.75 feet, nearly 2 foot maybe. So down here, yes, a little bit more softer. Already I can see the surface when I squeeze the shovel into the ground to make the little square. A lot of water has come up on top of the surface, so we'll see what the beneath is like. And as expected, it is a lot more wetter. You see, I can mould this quite easily. I can mould it way more than I could up at the top of the hill. If you remembered, I could mould it a small bit, but if I squeezed it too much, it would break off into little crumbs. This is staying in a somewhat mould shape. So yeah, down at the bottom of the hill, the ground is a lot worse. You can just see there. So yeah, I'll put that square back into the ground and trample it with my foot again, and that should do there. So now we're in the next field here. That's the field we were in. So I know with this field it can be hit and miss. Some areas of this field can be good and dry and solid-ish. I know maybe in that corner just there is probably one of the wettest parts of this field. So there is wet parts in this field, but it's like a hit and miss, a 50-50. Some areas are pretty solid and okay. Other areas are just, you wouldn't get in with a tractor without getting stuck. You might be able to get in here. You will be leaving some deep tire tracks, but in other parts of this field, not a hole, especially with the tractors that we have. You might get away with the 135 and twin wheels, but the front wheels, because there's no, they're still narrow, they're not wide, you'd still be digging with them. So again, I might only do one section in this field. I mightn't even bother. I'll probably just do somewhere in somewhere in the center of the field will do, and we can move on then to the next field. Well, that disappeared. Can you see it? There's about 3 inches of it left sticking up out of the ground. That's how deep it went. And there you go. That's about 2 foot-ish, just shy of 2 foot. Yeah. Maybe I should have brought a measuring tape and got exact measurements, but we live and learn. But that's probably just shy, just under 2 foot. I thought here would fare way better than the bottom of the hill out there, but obviously not. Now, get a bit of sunlight on it. You can still see that there's still moisture in it, but I think deeper down you go, yeah, I can mould it a bit, but there's still small little lumps breaking off. So yeah, now just remember, this isn't a professional review. I'm not using professional equipment either, but yeah, just put it that way. This isn't professional one bit at all. Right, so that's the field we were just in. This field basically the same as the field out there, 50-50, hit and miss. Some parts of it are grand, you travel on it no bother. Other parts you might get stuck. So yeah, we'll do our little amateur soil test again, and we'll see what it's saying. Right. That's how far I was able to get it down. Once pressure started coming onto it and I had to use force to get it down, I stopped. That's me. I'd be able to push it down, let's say like that with my hand, and once I'm not able, I'd stop. So yeah, it's obviously sticking up a lot more than it was in the other field out there, but yeah. It still went down a good distance, about similar, 1.5 foot, maybe just shy of 2 foot as well, the same as the last field we were in. So now we can see what this is like. A worm there, a sign of good healthy soil, that. Yeah, it's still crummy. Obviously the further down here you go, the more harder it's getting. Still moisture on it, but I'm not able to mould it as easily as other fields that we were in. So yeah, it's not too bad. Not too bad at all. So now we're in what we classify as our softest field. There's a small drain just above there. So this side, the far side of that drain, so that part of the field over by the wood there, is probably usually the softest. So we'll do a section in this half of the field and we'll do a bit over in the other half of the field. But this field is classified as one of our softest fields, mainly because a couple of months ago there was literally water lying on top of the surface and you could see it clear as day. Okay, that's actually not too bad. Do we have the last two fields we were in were worse? You can see that here is where I got up to in a field before, and about a foot ish, in and around, give or take a foot, that went down. So that's not as bad as I was expecting, to be honest with you. Now you can see there that there is quite guthrie below the surface as well. And I'm quite easily able to make a mould out of that as well, and it's sticking. So yeah, even deep down in the ground ish, the soil, the ground is still fairly soft and guttery, which is why this field is classified as one of our softest fields. So now we're in the second part of our softest field. The first thing we done was over there. This is the second half, the small drain somewhere up there. You can see that there is water as well lying on the ground, and even when I was walking over here I could just hear the water underneath my feet. So we'll see, is this side any different to the far side over there, but we'll get straight into it. Okay, that's a lot softer. I pushed that lash bit down with my finger, what is it, index finger and my thumb. I pushed it down something like that, the lash bit of it, and there's not even an inch sticking up out of the ground. About half an inch. Water down there, whether or not you can see it. And yeah, a lot more wetter this. A lot more wetter than the other half of the field. Yeah. So, water lying on top of the surface, and as I dug down, well, here where I was digging and where I put the rebar, I didn't put it in where there's a mark, a hoof mark or anything. I put it in on more solider ground, like here. That's where I pushed the rebar in, and that's where I dug the little square with the spade on a ground like this. And there's water down there as well. So, but that, it's a lot more wetter, a lot more water in that than there was in the last couple of fields we seen. Here we're in the next field, and if you remember, this is the field where I was the last video at the top one of last year, 2024, where it didn't go according to plan. As you can see, the grooves that was left, it was that video if you scroll back. Yeah, this was the last field that I topped for last year, and it was quite soft in patches. Over at the gate where there it is the softest, there's a lot of water lying on top of the ground. For every field that I've done so far, I've always went roughly into the middle of the field and done the test there. So this one won't be any different. They're somewhat the centre of the field, and we'll do the test. But yeah, it is quite soft in patches as well. Okay, that's not too bad. There's about about 2 inches there, 2.5 inches sticking up out of the ground. So not as bad as the last field we done. And as you can see there, that went down probably 2.5 foot, so it's not awfully bad. And now you can see there that it's still sort of crumbly, breaking off in clumps and lumps, but the visual texture, it's still wet, it still has water in it as per usual. But seems to be getting better the deeper down you go. Yeah, I wouldn't travel too much in this field either with a tractor or the likes. This one field is split into 4 paddocks. We have this paddock and that paddock out there, which is joined with that paddock just there, and then we have another paddock just there up along the wood line. So usually the first paddock is usually sound, the second paddock slightly wetter, that's usually our wettest, and then the third paddock is probably then gets a little bit worse compared to the first and second paddock. But yeah, we'll see how we get on. Down here on that is usually somewhat soft in patches, but I'll just consider that patch in with this paddock, and again somewhat go to the middle of the field and test it that way. So yeah, again where we're standing roughly about in the middle of the field, and we'll go ahead and see what the ground is like. That is the best I've seen throughout the day. That's as far as I can get it down without putting force or pressure on the rebar. If I was to get it down even more, I'd be forcing it down, putting a lot more strength in it than what I was doing in the last couple of fields. Again, I'm only putting it down with very little force, very little pressure, until I kind of get it down anymore without putting even more pressure onto it, if you know what I mean. So that, compared to the other fields we've done, is very, very good. So as you can see there, that only went into the ground about 3 or 4 inches. That's how far down it went into the ground before it got too hard to go anymore. So that's about 3 or 4 inches, which is a lot better than the other fields we've seen. That clay looks a lot more drier, less water in it than the other last couple of fields we tested. So this is probably one of our best fields, best grazing fields that we have. And again, you can see another worm there, sign of good soil. And again, if I wanted to go down further, I'm picking up sort of crumbs of clay, so you cannot mold that too easily. So the surface might be slightly wet, but down below, a bit deeper into the ground, is a whole lot better, a whole lot brighter. So yeah, that's the best we've seen so far in today's video. We're in the second paddock now, expecting this to perform somewhat similar to the first paddock out there. Maybe it might perform slightly worse, the rebar might go slightly down further, and there might be the ground might be a little bit wetter deeper down under the ground than it was out in the first paddock. But right, again, that's as far down as I can push it without applying even more force at it. Yeah, as I predicted, it is slightly softer. The rebar did go down slightly more than it did in the first paddock. And as you can see there, what's that, about, I wish I brought a measuring tape, would have gave us a more accurate result. But anyways, that's about 8 inches, 7-8 inches roughly, give or take, 7 or 8. So not too bad at all. Again, put it out into the sunlight. It is very similar to paddock 1 that we tested, but again, I think it's slightly more softer, I think. Yeah, not awfully bad, not awfully bad. Now we are in our third and last paddock and last field that we are going to be testing in today's video. Walking on it, it doesn't feel too bad. There's no water line on top of the ground, and the ground doesn't feel spongy. I cannot really move it with my foot or anything, so we'll see. Where the top inch or so of the ground is sort of hard. That could be due to the vegetation, the grass and stuff, and the roots. But once I broke through that sort of crusty, hard, small bit of the surface, it just went boom, straight down. I think that was half of it went underneath the ground, and the other half was sticking up out of the ground. So again, I should have brought a bloody measuring tape, but anyways, we live and we learn, and we learn. You can still see that the dirt, the earth is still very brownish, so there's still a bit of water on it, but not as much as the first couple of fields we tested. And there's the clay. You can't really mold it too well, it just breaks off into little crumbs. So as I said earlier, the first paddock is usually our best, followed by our second paddock, then followed by our third paddock. And the results obviously pointed that out to us, confirmed my theory that that's sort of always been the case. So yeah, not too bad, not too bad. We'll head back to the yard now and take it from there. We've tested our fields. Obviously the first few at the start of the video were not the best. They were quite soft, and as we progressed near the end of the video, the fields got a bit better. So obviously in the wettest of them fields, especially with the kit that we have, we wouldn't travel too well on them fields. We'd be leaving a lot of trenches, you can see the International's back tyre quite narrow. Obviously the front tyres are also quite narrow. The 135, even though it has its twin wheels, they are also the front wheels are also narrow. So with the wetter fields, you wouldn't travel anywhere with them with the Init. You wouldn't travel anywhere on them with the International. You'll leave a lot of trenches, possibly even get stuck. With the 135, especially the front wheel of the 135, because it's the narrowest, you'll leave a mark there, and that's when you'll be bogging up the field on that position. Now, the more better of our fields, you might travel it with the International and the 135, but maybe not travel on it too much, constantly going over and back, because then it'll start then getting mucky at that stage, because there's still the soil, the dirt is still wet. It's not dry like it would be in the summer. So you'd eventually, on the more drier, harder fields, traveling constantly on them might be a bit bad. You'll probably still leave a little bit of gutter after a certain amount of time. Yeah, some fields I was predicting them to be that soft. Other fields I was predicting them not to be as soft, but there were some fields there that were soft that caught me by surprise of how soft it was, and there was other fields out there that I knew weren't going to be as soft, but the rebar didn't go down too deep, so I was surprised at that as well. That is going to be the end of today's video. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out my new official online merch store as well. The link to that will be down in the description, and I'll see you in my next video very soon. Take care.